Well, welcome everybody to May's installment of Faith in Business. So glad you all are here. It's awesome to me because we've seen a lot of familiar faces, a few faces we hadn't seen in a while, a few new faces, so that's all good. I'm super pumped. I'm going to share with you guys later, actually taking Faith in Business to Raleigh. So we're going to have our first Faith in Business in Raleigh later this month. Many thanks to Austin and Christy Ailey. It's Austin's brother-in-law, Lee, and his sister Lee, who are helping us out up there. So really excited. I just feel like there's a lot of energy around what's happening, what God wants to do with this, what He is doing with this, and so it's good stuff. For those who've not been before, just a little bit of a kind of overview. This is a function of our nonprofit ministry called the Life Center, and it's directly tied to our for-profit business, Uprint, which is a faith and personal development company. So what we do is we provide content and resources for both individuals and businesses to help them kind of grow and thrive in their excellence. And this outreach tool is basically like, for lack of better language, church for business. It's kind of an idea of how do we engage conversations about faith that apply directly to our business? How do we get connected with other faith-based leaders in our community? And how do we walk out this thing called faith in the middle of a culture out there that has every other kind of opinion on how we should be doing things? So that's really what we're about. We appreciate those of you who support us by coming. And just want to tell you guys, continue to be a resource for us and just help invite other people. Let us know what you're enjoying and what it is that you're looking for, because this is never about pontification just to get up here and talk. I really want to give you guys some tools and resources that you can carry them out there and really be the arms and legs and hands and feet of the body in Wilmington to begin to change the city, which is exactly what we're going to be talking about today. We have a corporate partner program. These folks support us financially, and then we support them with referrals and just with celebrating them and highlighting them in our community. It's a great way for us to partner together. Many thanks to everybody who's a part of this. These folks also get recognition on our radio broadcast each week, which is casted. You guys have access to that. So there's a massive amount of resources available. I get a call sometimes and somebody says, hey man, I'm trying to buy a house, or I'm trying to, I need some dental work, or, whatever the case might be. I'm looking for somebody to help with finances. And we have this great pool of assets and relationships that are here, which to me speaks volumes about the way the kingdom should work. It's like, bring what you have that none may have need. And that's really what this is about. So anyway, many thanks to our corporate partners for helping put all this together and being a part of what we do. All right. Today, I really felt like going back to the beginning to revisit why we even do this. What Faith in Business is about. Why did you start it? Because we've been doing this for about 18 months now. And 18 months in the midst of chaos. We had a really strong presence. Then we got punched in the mouth because nobody could meet in person. We tried to do... Oh, will you X out of that box for me, please, dear? It should just be remind me later. And then double click that right there. Perfect. Thank you. We couldn't meet in person, and then we tried to do Zoom for a little bit, and we came back, and it was, slowly building. So we're starting to kind of get the train back up again. And I felt like it was a great way for us as we're launching in Raleigh to go back to the reason why we do this. Okay. So the gap between Sundays. This is Matt's understanding of being a business guy and being in relationship with people. Many people who call themselves Christians find themselves between Sundays not really knowing what to do. Because it's on Sunday, I go to my church, and then I'm back in this crazy world, and then on Sunday I go back to church. So there's this gap between Sundays where a lot of people get lost. Now, I know that because I walk in relationship with a lot of people who struggle with things during the week that they can't really go to church on Sunday and get, information on how to change that, right? And so what we said is if there's a gap between Sundays, we want to bridge that gap. But it's not just the gap between Sundays. In our culture, there is a massive gap between what we call faith and how we live it out, which is business. And I've told you guys this before, it's just my experience. I was up one Sunday morning at like 5 a.m. I live over off of Eastwood Road. The Lord told me to go over to Port City Church, walk around it 7 times and pray. So I did. And when I walked around it the 7th time, I had a massive vision, like a picture of Port City Church and Live Oak Bank and a giant wall between the two of them. And I'm not saying that with presumption. I'm not trying to declare anything. I'm not throwing rocks at either of those institutions. I'm saying this is namely the largest faith institution in our city and the largest business institution in our city. And it seems as if there's a wall between the two because we go to work Monday through Friday, then we go to church on Sunday. And how do we live this thing out in the middle? And my heart, ever since I've been a high schooler, has been to bridge this gap. And I've told you, my senior project when I was at New Hanover High School was titled Faith in Business. In fact, I was looking at some old papers at Mom and Dad's house, and I found my paper. Like, I found the Faith in Business paper. And I was like, holy cow, this is like 20 years later, and this is actually what we're doing. So it's really neat how God's building that narrative. So we want to bridge this gap between Sundays, between our business and between our faith. The question is how do you do that? And that's where you get a lot of different opinions. And so I'm not interested into the how necessarily, because we believe that God is the how. God wants to bridge that gap. God did not put a wall between your church and where you spend your time, which is in business. But at the same time, we're in a culture right now that is constantly pressing us in relation to our business lives. So if you look at this right here at the bottom, I said, our identity in one of these arenas is going to drive our identity in another. Y'all know what I mean when I say that? Like, if your identity is completely wrapped up in your business, that is going to influence how you experience and navigate your faith. But if your identity is wrapped up in who God's called you to be, that is going to express itself in your business. If you don't have clarity on who you are, who God's created you to be, you are going to misappropriate your identity, and your identity is going to be wrapped up in your business, and that is going to affect your faith life. And that's where so many folks in our culture are lost in this. And it's, oh my gosh, I got this email, I got to get this client thing, it's whatever. And it's this constant attachment to the work we do under the guise of providing for the family or the noble thing to do to work hard, but we're missing the reality that our identity should never be tied up in what we do. I was listening to a sermon from Tim Keller, and it's probably 20 years old at this point, but he said New York has a way of life, and when he went to New York to establish Redeemer Presbyterian Church up there, he said that New Yorkers, like a 60-hour work week is a badge of honor. And he said that he was talking with people in the city, and he said, nobody came up here to enjoy New York. We came up here to do work, to do our work. Like, this is the place, right? It's that old Frank Sinatra song, you know? If I can make it here, I can make it anywhere. Not really, Frank. Because you can make it in New York and not make it in the kingdom. That's a massive truth that we have to reconcile. And we have to realize that our identity in our businesses is constantly going to drive our identity and how we see ourselves, the way God sees us. But it's got to be the other way around. We have to see ourselves the way God sees us, and then that's how it expresses itself. The other thing is we cannot live independently in these areas. And I see this is compartmentalization, right? The greatest compartmentalizers in history are serial killers. Oh my gosh, I never imagined that. It's because they can compartmentalize. They could be sitting at a dinner table having a great conversation, and then over here stalking somebody and killing them. Because they've learned how to compartmentalize their life into these different personas. And it's that whole idea of the boxes of your life and, life balance and, juggling plates and all this stuff. That's not how God created us to be. It doesn't mean we can't have areas of our life. It just means that those areas are not independent of one another. One of the things I always say is a balloon with a hole is no longer a balloon. What I mean by that, if there's a hole in your faith life, your business will ultimately run into a dead end because there's a lack of integrity in another part of your life. Okay? And again, I'm giving us a big kind of around the mountain, why do we do this? What problems do we face? Why does this matter? It matters because there's a world of people out there who have not really truly understood this truth. It's work hard, go to church, do good things. Work hard, go to church, do good things. And it's this constant cycle where people miss why they were placed on the earth and what influence they have to bring to the earth for God's glory. The last thing here, faith is about who you are, who God created you to be, and business is about how you express that in the world. Faith is who you are, business is how you express it. That's the way God created us to be. Work was an essential part of God's creation. When He created the heavens and the earth, He put them to work. In fact, even God Himself works because it says in Genesis, after He had finished the work, He saw that it was good. To wrap our brains around the fact that God works. He's not a deity on a throne, lightning, bolt, and thunder. He's actually laboring to bring forth His goodness into the earth by creating. So we partner with Him when we create. And that's a powerful concept that we have to get a hold of. So, today we're going to be reading from a passage in Luke that I feel like it's a hidden gem. Like I feel like the Lord led me to this about 2 years ago, and it's almost like I shouldn't have seen it the way that I saw it. It's like right now with no gas. It's like when you drive around and you see a gas station. It's like finding a gas station when we leave here with nobody in line, and everybody had that. You just, oh my gosh, there's gas. Like I almost feel bad. I found it and nobody else has it. Like that's the way it felt to me. It was like, oh my gosh, like I shouldn't have this right now, but I do. And thank you, Lord. So the way I see this passage is really, really, really wild with the context of what I've just shared. So if you'll give me a moment, I want to break it down and then give it to you guys to chat about it. Okay? So engage in business. One of the things that I want to say as a caveat or as a marker for this is you cannot live a life of faith without your business, and you cannot engage in your business without faith. It's impossible to do that. They need one another, right? They're codependent upon one another. And so here's this passage in Luke 19. Now, before I read this passage, I've got to set this up. You know, the Bible is not just a kind of playbook for living well, do this, don't do that. It's not just a book of stories. It's a doorway into the character of God. And how we read it says everything about how we see Him. So this parable we're going to read from today, has anybody ever heard of the parable of the talents? Right? The parable of the talents is found in Matthew. Jesus teaches that parable during Holy Week. So He's in Jerusalem. It's the final week of His life, and He teaches this parable of the talents. Okay? The parable of the minas is very similar. And a lot of folks confuse them. Oh, that's the same parable, but they're not. The parable of the minas happened before He entered Jerusalem. And it's a different context and a different story. That's what we're going to read in Luke 19. But to read the parable of the minas properly, you have to read what happens just before the parable of the minas. Okay? Because it starts with, as they heard these things, He proceeded to tell a parable. So as they're experiencing something, then Jesus launches into a story. Well, the story matters, but it also matters what they were hearing that led Him to tell the story. Y'all with me? All right, so Zacchaeus here. So I'm going to read this and just give a couple of little nuggets about it. So Jesus is now at the end of His ministry, 3-year ministry. He's going back to Jerusalem. He's told the guys, hey, they're going to have to bury me, and 3 days I'm going to rise from the dead. And they're like, okay, cool, Jesus, whatever. They don't even understand. And they're heading back in, and He stops in Jericho. He entered Jericho, or is passing through, and there was a man named Zacchaeus. He was a chief tax collector, only time that's ever found in Scriptures, and was rich. And he was seeking to see who Jesus was, but on account of the crowd, he could not, because he was rich and he was short. So he ran on ahead of them and climbed up in a sycamore tree to see Him, for he was about to pass that way. And when Jesus came to the place, He looked up and said to him, Zacchaeus, Hurry and come down, for I must stay at your house today. It's just amazing to me. Jesus knew his name, you know, and there's a little tiny man in a tree, and he's like, Zacchaeus, I'm staying at your house. Like, how cool is this whole thing that's happening here? It's just amazing. So he hurried and came down and received him joyfully. My man was excited. He was like, he called my name, right? And when they saw it, they grumbled. Who's the they? Everybody else. All the religious people that are following Jesus around. When they saw it, they grumbled. He has gone in to be the guest of a man who is a sinner. Right? Love my grandma, but that sounds like something she would say. Lord forgive me. Bless Eloise's heart. She ain't here to defend herself. But that's serious, though. We think about it this way, and it's like, how dare he go eat with a sinner? You know? But I love that because Jesus is just confounding their wisdom. And Zacchaeus stood and said to the Lord, Behold, Lord. He called Jesus Lord. Holy cow. The half of my goods I give to the poor, and if I have defrauded anyone of anything, I restore it fourfold. Half of my goods I give to the poor, and if I've defrauded anyone anything, I restore it fourfold. I dare anybody in this room to make that statement today. I know I can't. I mean, that makes me nervous. I don't know who I've defrauded, maybe unintentionally, but to give back 4 times plus half of what I have. So what are you seeing in Zacchaeus? You're seeing a massive change of heart. You're seeing a man who had basically made his life about getting rich off of swindling people out of money. That's how tax collectors made their dime. They basically would say, you owe the government 15, but make it 25, and I'm going to put a little bit in my pocket. That's how he had lived his life. But he encounters Jesus, and something changes in the moment that's powerful. Everybody's angry, but Zacchaeus has had a complete revelation on what this thing is about. And Jesus said to him, Today, salvation has come to this house. Today, salvation has come to this house, since he also is a son of Abraham. For the Son of Man came to seek and save the lost. Right? You got some churchy language in there. Seek and save the lost. Right? But what you don't have is Jesus looking at Zacchaeus and go, do you believe in the Lord? And, have you repented? And do you ask forgiveness? And the sinner's prayer. You don't see Jesus going through the sinner's prayer with Zacchaeus, do you? So what's the deal here? Jesus saw his heart. And his heart said, You're Lord, here's half of everything I have, and I restore everything fourfold to anybody that I've defrauded. And Jesus goes, You don't need the sinner's prayer, bro. You get it. You've got it. You understand the kingdom of God, while everybody on the outside is grumbling. Do y'all see the dichotomy that's being set up here? So in light of that, then Jesus tells this story. So the story that we're getting ready to tell, I want to make sure I didn't miss anything here. We have to consider Zacchaeus. The Son of Man came to seek and save the lost, right? So seek and save the lost, that's the call. The Son of Man came to do this, but how does he do it? Like traditional church things is get them in church, get them to say the sinner's prayer, get them saved, right? Not saying that's wrong. I'm saying this is showing us a different way for that to actually happen. Zacchaeus is our example. All right, so now dive into the parable of the minas. As they heard these things, he proceeded to tell a parable because he was near to Jerusalem and because they supposed the kingdom was to appear immediately. Very important to consider those two things. He told it because near to Jerusalem and they expected the kingdom to appear immediately. He said, therefore, a nobleman went into a far country to receive for himself a kingdom and then return. Calling 10 of his servants, he gave them 10 minas and said to them, this is the word, engage in business. Okay, so he's telling a story. Nobleman is heading into a far country to get for himself a kingdom. As he's going away, he turns around to his servants and he says, here's 10 minas. Engage in business. Now, in order to know what that means is, a mina was 3 months' wage. So this nobleman is giving them resources. 3 months' wage. Most people in this room probably make somewhere in the neighborhood of, I don't know, $50,000 to $80,000. Let's just say that's a kind of medium income in Wilmington. So you're talking about this nobleman giving someone somewhere in the neighborhood of $12,000 to $20,000 in modern terms, okay? It's a significant amount of money. It's not like, hey, here's $5, get a cheeseburger. He's saying, here's some significant resources. And what does he tell him to do while he goes away? Engage in business. This phrase, engage in business, is the secret sauce. It's the only time this word is found in the entire New Testament. In all of the stories told and in all of the letters written, this word is only found here. The word is pragmatuomai. That's the actual Greek word, pragmatuomai. It has a couple of different meanings. One of them is engage in business. One of them is occupy yourselves. And the other is do work. So if you look at this, when he gives them the money, he says, get busy with it. Get on with it. Occupy yourself with work. Go engage in business. Go do business. So Jesus is teaching a parable to a bunch of Jewish people who are grumbling about a tax collector, and he's saying, I am this noble man, right, in the story, who is sent into a far country, right? He's going back to the Father, and while I'm away, I'm giving you resources, and I'm giving you a command to get busy with it, to engage in business. Now, why would Jesus tell this story now? There's plenty of things he could talk about. He's getting ready to go back into Jerusalem and be crucified. The powerful thing about this is the very next passage of Scripture is the triumphal entry. So they're waiting with palm branches, but before he goes on to the palm branches, this is the final thing that he tells the people. That's powerful to me. This is the secret sauce to me that God is saying, hey, some crazy stuff's getting ready to happen. And you're going to hear all kinds of stuff about I'm not coming back and all this kind of stuff. But I want you to know I'm going away for a minute. But while I go away, you're supposed to engage in business. Do y'all see this picture? This is a powerful, powerful hidden gem that I had really never seen until a couple years ago. Because the Western ideology of how we do church says, you know, if Jesus was going to tell us something, He was going to tell us to go get people saved. Which I know the Great Commission says, right? To disciple nations. But the challenge is how to do it. I think this story is teaching us how to disciple nations. It's not standing on a street corner teaching people about Jesus. It's actually engaging in the business that He's called you to engage in. The greatest form of discipleship is you living out what God placed inside of you. If that's teaching kids how to swim, if that's being a financial advisor, if that's detailing boats, if that's being a significant businessman or a concierge, if that's running restaurants, whatever it is, that is how you evangelize the nations. By engaging in the business that He put inside of you. And this was like, man, just massively messed with my mind because we've always made discipleship about, you know, getting people to Jesus. And instead of about living out living out the Jesus that's already in you. So engage in business, pragmatuomai. All right, back to the story. Engage in business until I come. But his sins hated him and sent a delegation saying, we do not want this man to reign over us. That's all the people that are busy grumbling. He says, engage in business, and everybody's like, yeah, but we don't even want to listen to you anyway. Which shows that there's a consternation, there's a natural force that is fighting against this idea. So when he returned, having received the kingdom, This is so massive. When he returned, having received the kingdom, he ordered these servants to whom he had given the money to be called to him, that he might know what they had gained by doing business. Meaning he did not send them into business to fail. What have you gained by engaging in business with what I have given you? The first came to him and said, Lord, your mina has made 10 minas more. So your 3 months' wage is now worth 30 months' wage. Tenfold return. I took what you gave me, and now it's worth 10 times. And he said to him, well done, good servant. Because you have been faithful in very little, you shall have authority over 10 cities. All right, this makes no sense. The nobleman doesn't come back and said, because you've done good work. He doesn't come back and said, because you have been successful. He uses the word faithful. So work is not about our effort and look at how strong I am and how hardworking I am. Work in its essence is about our faithfulness to do what God has called us to do. Which is why we can't separate faith and business. So he said, you've been faithful. And he doesn't say, and you get a new car. Right? It's not some marketing scheme. But what does he tell him he's going to give him? Authority over cities. This makes no sense. What I think God's saying is if you are faithful with what I have given you to live out and engage in the business that I placed inside of you faithfully, I'm going to give you authority over cities. And that's hard for us to grasp. We always think about how do we change a city. This teaches us we change a city by faithfully engaging in the business that God called us to. That's what changes cities. Not how many poor people we feed. Not that that's bad. But we have to understand that there can be a gap between the two if we're missing out on finding our identity in the work that God's called us to do. And the very work that God's called you to do might be able to feed homeless people, which is totally fine. I've got one of my best friends in the world who runs a homeless ministry downtown, and it's what he was made for. So it's not exclusive. I'm just saying that we all can't go in the same box. We all have to have these different boxes, one body, many parts. So he goes to the next guy. And the second saying, Lord, your mina has made 5 minas. And he said to him, and you are to be over 5 cities. So one man, hey, you made 10, you got 10 cities. One man made 5, you got 5 cities. Your authority is directly proportional to how you stewarded what you've been given. Your authority in the kingdom is directly proportional to how faithful you've been with what He's given you. Then another came saying, Lord, here's your mina, which I kept laid away in a handkerchief. I keep seeing the mina right now as I'm even teaching through this as a seed. Just a seed. If a nobleman came and said, hey, here's a seed. And you're like, okay, thank you. But my man planted it, and now all of a sudden he has 10 trees. Oh my gosh, I didn't even know He gave me trees. I thought He gave me a seed. How cool is God? The next guy planted it, and he has 5. Well, one guy goes, I don't really know what this seed is. I don't know how to use it, so I'm just going to put it in a handkerchief over here because, God will do something with it because God is good. It's interesting, the third servant actually still calls him Lord. So there's a heart where he recognizes this nobleman as the Lord, but he's not faithful with what he's been given. He lays it in a handkerchief. Why does he lay it in a handkerchief? For I was afraid of you. Because you are a severe man, you take what you did not deposit and you reap what you did not sow. So then the nobleman says, I will condemn you with your own words, you wicked servant. You knew I was severe, taking what I did not deposit and reaping what I did not sow. Why then did you not at least put my money in the bank, and at my coming I might have collected interest? And he said to those who stood by, take his mina from him and give it to the one that has 10. And they said, but Lord, he's got 10 already. Do y'all see how unfair this seems? And how anti-cultural it is? You know, we live in a culture right now that says, well, you got a lot, Chris, so take your lot and go over here because that man doesn't have enough and you need to go give that to him. And people are going to tell you that that's being like Jesus. That's not what happens in this story. He takes from the man with 1 and gives it to the man who has 10. Why would he do that? Why would he do that? Because of faithfulness, yes. And he says, to everyone who has, more will be given. But from the one who has not, even what he has will be taken away. That is not part of the feel-good gospel. It's not part of the watered-down thing that we see parading around our world as Christianity. Now, how do you reconcile this with Zacchaeus, who just gave away half of his stuff? It's not about how much you have or how much you give away. It's always about your heart. Zacchaeus was being faithful. This guy with the 10 minas was being faithful. It's not about your duty, your obligation, how much you give, how many people you feed. It's not about any of that stuff. It's always about the heart. That's why Jesus goes on to say, you prophesied in my name, but I don't even know who you are. You're parading around like you actually know me, but your heart is far from me. You cannot hide or fool God. You can't be so crafty that you catch Him. I got Him. Do y'all see the power of what's being revealed in the gospel here? This flies in the face of all of this concept of justice that we see in culture right now. Which again, I'm not chasing that rabbit. I'm saying there are massive things that need work in our culture, but God doesn't do it the way we think He should. It's not Robin Hood, rob from the rich and give to the poor. This is the opposite. It's rob from the poor and give to the rich. What? But we have to sit with this. We've got to let God offend us enough to go, okay, I want you to reveal what you're actually saying here. Because it's not about the man who has 1 is a bad man. God's just saying, you haven't been faithful with what I've given you. I pour out on faith. So it challenges our concept of fairness. Because a lot of times I think we say, well, we want God to be fair. That's not fair. I always have this picture of Jesus hanging on the cross going, oh, this isn't fair. Did He say that? So why do we? Why do we allow culture to convince us that we should walk around being the bearers of fairness and justice? We point to God. Hey, He's the one. I'm just being faithful to that. So y'all can tell this message has been pregnant in me for a while, and it's so profound. There's so much going on here. So I want to let you guys talk about it. So what's He saying? What's the picture of what I believe God's saying in this narrative to us, how we live it out now? First thing I think He's saying is our work is how we evangelize, and it's how we gain authority over cities. Our work. That's why we do what we do, because we believe that the work that you've been called to do, the genius that you have, the gifts that you have to be lived out in this city to God's glory if we are going to change it. And we need all of us. The work is actually how this all takes place. The second thing, you've got to understand, you've already been given what you need. So many people walk around going, well, I don't have money. I don't have the connections. I don't have... You got God. You've got God, and you've got what He put inside of you. One of the texts that we send out in our Portable Faith community, it said, I'm paraphrasing it, but it says, if God's good enough to give you the gifts and talents and passions and desires that you have, is He not good enough to carry them out? We have a deficient view of God if we think He's good enough to save our life with every breath, but not give us the desires of our heart, which is what He promises to do. So we have to reframe how we see God. The third thing, fear is the enemy. The man who didn't plant the seed was afraid. How many people are sitting on a business idea? How many people are sitting on something that they want to do and they're not engaging it because they're afraid? If I step into this, gosh, it could fail and I'm not going to have enough money to make it and my family's going to starve and they're going to be on the street corner, so I'm just going to go back over here and do this. We run from our purpose because we're afraid that God's not good enough to actually fulfill it. We can't be like the one guy who holds on to the seed. I'll say this right now. Seed does nothing when it's in your barn. Doesn't mean don't be prudent. It doesn't mean have some savings. It doesn't mean, people want to polarize it. But seed ultimately is not going to grow sitting in your barn. One of the things that Kevin has always said is money is like mustard. It's good. It's great. It tastes good on hot dogs. I like it with a hot pretzel. You know what I mean? Like, mustard's good. But it'd be really weird if you came to my house and I said, look at how much mustard I have in my closet. Like if you walked in my house and I opened up my pantry and I had wall-to-wall of mustard. That's how we treat money, right? Money's good. It does great things. But when we've got it hoarded up in our closets, and you know what I mean? And not that I'm saying the heart of the person is like, look at how much money I have and how much mustard I have. It deconstructs this concept of what we are supposed to have it for in the first place. It's a resource to be used to engage in business, to evangelize, and to bring His goodness forth. The last thing, more will be given. This is a promise of God. If you are faithful with what you've been given, I'm going to give you more. So the question isn't what more is coming. The question is are we being faithful with what we've been given? And so this really presses on a lot of different areas that we hear from culture and from traditional Christian teaching to say, what am I going to do with this? How am I going to wrestle with this? Now, we're not going to solve all this today, but I do want you guys to talk about it at your tables. So discussion questions, y'all can talk about whatever you want to. This is just my thoughts on it. How does your faith shape your business engagements? Do you see your business through the lens of faith, or do you see your faith through the lens of business? What is your mina? In the story, He gave him a mina, 3 months' wage. I think a mina can apply to financial resources, but I also think a mina can apply to a certain gift. It's a resource. It's a tangible thing, It's like I'm going to pick on my dad for a second. My dad retired after 34 years at Coastal Beverage. He was in the beer business. And, he retired not to go sit around. He said, you know what, I love working with my hands. I love helping people. So I'm going to go start a little handyman business. And we're going to call it Helping Ham. And it's unbelievable, God's favor, how it's poured out on it. He could work every single day if he wanted to. He doesn't want to, and that's fine. He could hire 5 crews of guys, and they could have more work than they ever wanted to do. But what he's actually also been able to do is take some of the resources from that and turn around and pour it in and bless people who need it. He's been able to help people that don't have the resources to fix rotten doors or windows or things like that. But what's really neat about it is God has poured out through that. We have a couch sitting in our living room right now that we didn't pay a dime for because it was at a house that he was renovating. And the lady goes, do you need a couch? Little did she know, my wife had just sent me a picture of a couch that was at the secondhand store that almost looked identical to this couch that cost $1,500. And I said, we need to really pray about this because we're not in a position to buy a $1,500 couch. Dad sends a picture over. Hey, do you guys need a couch? My wife literally came to me and goes, is your dad joking? And I said, no, sweetheart. He didn't know anything about you wanting a couch. I said, that's what God does when we are faithful. Y'all come to my house and sit on the couch. It's real. And I didn't pay for it. God did. So what's your mina? And the last thing is, how do you want to see our city changed? In the story, he says, I'm giving you authority over cities. I don't know about y'all, but I'm waiting on that part. I'm waiting on that part. That's his promise. So we better start formulating an idea of how we want to see it changed. And that's why this exists. This exists for no less purpose than to change the city of Wilmington. And I'm marching up the road, and we're going to change Raleigh too. Because I'm crazy enough to believe that God will do what he said he was going to do. So you guys chat around the table. We'll take about 10 minutes, and then we'll wrap up and be out of here on time.